Before we play back though, I want to change the tempo because normally it just defaults to I think 60 BPM. Now for those of you who are familiar with this song, if we play this at 60 BPM by pressing the play button here, way too slow. It's closer to about 170. So 170, enter, play. That's better. But there's another problem. This song is swung, as are many jazz songs. So if you want to add a swing, you go up to MIDI audio, human playback, jazz. And you can actually use this for any genre that you want to swing to. It doesn't have to specifically be jazz. But now when we do the playback, it's not going to be very noticeable because it's mostly chord notes, but you will notice with these eighth notes at the end of the phrase. And then push stop. Okay, so now we're good to keep going. First 4 bars have repeat signs. So the main tool palette over here, you're going to click on the repeat tool, and you're going to double click the forward repeat and the backward repeat. So for the forward repeat, we'll go to this measure here, double click. Forward repeat is already selected, so we just push select. And now here, for the backward repeat, double click, back, do back ending if they were going to be like a first or second ending, but not in this case, so just back, and then select. So now it's going to ask you how many times to do it. It's really a vamp, actually, in the tune. We could do 2, but let's do 4. So now, let's listen to what that sounds like. To double click on the stop. I changed mine. I do just want to. So, go to the back ending again. It's already there, so we're going to click on the little box, push delete to get rid of it, double click the measure, go to back, do this step again, and then leave it at 2 times. Okay. Moving on to the melody. So we've already got the treble clef, that's good. So now we just need these notes to be added in. So again, we're going to click on the quarter note and just start entering them. An eighth note. So now for dotted notes, there are 2 ways you can do it. One is to click on the quarter note, have your quarter note tool here, but then also click on the dot, so now you have a dotted quarter note, which is fine. The only disadvantage is when you're done, you have to then go click on the dot again. So a shortcut you can use is to just put the base value of the note in, and then push the period button on the keyboard. That'll add the dot, and you don't have to turn anything off. There's a tie on this note, so just like before, push T for tie. Now click on your eighth notes. On that A flat, B, and now we have our first accidental. So just like everything else in Finale, there are many ways you can do each specific task. One way for this one would just like the dotted quarter note. You could select the note value you want and then select the natural sign and do that. But again, you'd have to go back and you'd have to deselect that. So what I prefer to do is use a keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut for natural is the letter N. The keyboard shortcut for flat is minus, and the keyboard shortcut for sharp is plus. So we went natural, so I'm going to push N again. Moving forward, we have the G, tied to another G, F. Oh, I went too low. So rather than pushing delete or doing anything else, I just go to the arrow pad and I push the up arrow, and I can correct that to an F. Half note, D, Now we have 4 blank measures here. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, this song is almost always played with this measure being repeated here and here. So let's do that. Put those in like they are. And now, for the next measure, you'll notice it starts the same as this one, but it's a little different. So this is what we could do. We could just enter the notes normally, but I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to hold Shift, copy that one. So I'm going to do Command Copy, Command Paste, and then I'm going to take my 8th note, select the A, and use the arrows. I'm just going to pull it up to D. I think that's a lot faster than the alternative. And we could even do the same thing for this measure. Since it's just one, I can just click and drag that measure to where I want it, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to drag the cursor over the note and slide it up to where I want it. So I'm going to slide that one up to E flat. I'm going to slide this one up to D. But it was raised before, but we don't want a D sharp here, so I'm just going to push N for natural. Bring that up to C, bring that up to C. Bring this one up to B. And then half note. G, F. And now for this part, it looks very similar to this one. So 2 blank bars. Again, this is something that you... Oh, sorry, that's coming up. Okay, so we're dragging this B measure back down here. And what I like to do is, pull measures where I can. You don't have to do it. I just save time whenever I can. And this measure can go here. And just like earlier, it's typically also played here. It's just a repeated pattern. And if you're familiar with the song, that's something that I'm sure you almost expect it to be there. It would seem odd if it wasn't. So B, push that N to make it natural. And just like when you're reading music, the natural lasts the full measure. For the D, I want a dotted quarter note, so I do a regular quarter note and then push the period for the dot. T for tie. Finish off that tie. And then I have this G down here. And now B flat. Now in the music here, you'll see that they put B flat even though it's in the key signature. That's called a courtesy accidental, and they did it because the previous 2 measures had used B natural, and they just want to make it more likely that the person playing this will play the correct notes. So if you want to input a courtesy accidental, you push P, and it's going to put the accidental in parentheses. And we want to push period to make it a dotted half note. And go to the quarter note, G, period, 8th note, C, G, G flat, minus to make it flat. Now, really long tie. So F, period, and there are 3 of them. So I'm actually going to just do Command Copy, Command Paste, Command Paste. And now I'm going to highlight this note, but when I highlight it, it actually puts it back to a half note. So I'll just push period again, tie, move over with the right arrow, tie. You'll see that I accidentally skipped a measure, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go up to the arrow, click on that measure, push delete. Everything's good. And it is a little bit too long. It's 1 measure too long. So I'm just going to click and drag to select those measures and push delete. Another way is to click on the first one, hold shift, click on the last one. That's especially useful if you're deleting many measures. There we go. So we have the notes in so far. Let's listen to it now. All right, sounds good. Next level, let's put those chords in. So the chords are entered with this C major 7, that's the chord tool, and you're going to, you'll notice that you have this directional arrow. So we want to put the chords on top. We're going to move the cursor so that's directly above where we want the chord to be, directly above the note where we want the chord. So I'm going to double click there. In jazz music, they often use a minus sign to indicate minor. We can do that, C minus 7 means C minor 7, but let's just go with C lowercase m 7, C minor 7 that way. And then we're going to put another one here. So this is saying that Finale didn't know what that means. So I can add it in and I can just say, okay, that's fine. But the fact that Finale didn't recognize C M7, most musicians would, but some might not, depending on their background. Chords are surprisingly regional and also very based on style and genre. So if we really want to be specific and not confuse anyone, we can delete that by clicking on the box and pushing delete, and then typing CMIN7. That will not confuse anyone. Now let's click here, do CMIN7. Now you'll notice it's in the way of the arranger's name. We'll fix that in a moment. Let's just finish putting the chords in first. So we're going to go down to measure 14, add this F minor 7. Just like below, let's just do F min 7. Now technically that has a B flat in there, so it should be an F minor 11. So let's do that. And then we get C minor 7 when the B flat comes back in, which is over here. Double click, C min 7. Okay. And now we get these fun chords. So we'll go to the B natural. Now, as you're writing these in, it's important that you don't leave any space. Like if you push the space bar, we'll think a new chord is starting. So we're going to write F sharp, just like normal, using, oh, by the way, with the chords, you want to use shift, so they're always capital. Just like normal, you would do shift and then push the 3 for the sharp. And now min 7. We could just put lowercase b 5 for flat 5, but again, we're going for clarity. So I want to do parentheses, flat 5. This is probably not going to recognize it. Oh, it did. Great. And then this next chord is an F7 with a sharp 11. Next one is E7 flat 5 sharp 9. There are a few ways you can do this when you have different extensions. Flat 5, I see commas a lot, flat 5, sharp 9, that's one way to do it, as long as it's clear. So, Finale did not recognize that one. But that's okay, let's add it to the library. It might not play it back right. Let's see if we can change that. No, we won't worry about that now. So yeah, just make sure it's something that can be read. And then for that last new chord there, A7 flat 5 sharp 9 over the G, A7 parentheses flat 5 comma sharp 9, and then on that F it's another C minor, but it's not actually C minor 7 if it has an F in it. It becomes a C minor 11, so let's just write what it actually is. Alright, so now the chords are all there, but there are two problems. The first one is it doesn't look like the music. The music has, generally speaking, 4 measures per line. Also, the chords are kind of in the way of each other. So first, let's correct the issue of 4 measures per line. So we're going to go to Utilities, Fit Measures, 4 per line. Now that worked for most of them, but this pickup measure kind of threw it off. With each version of Finale, they kind of change that a little bit. Sometimes pickup measures count as a measure, and sometimes they don't. In this current iteration of Finale, in some functions it counts as a measure, and others it doesn't. So let's Command Z to undo that. So let's click on the very first measure. Actually, let's go to Utilities, Fit Measures. So let's say we're going to do a 5-bar bracket between measures 1 and 5. And then from measures 6 through 29, we're going to do 4. See if that all worked out correctly. And almost. Looks like something's just a little off here. Oh, it's that we have an extra measure there. So let's get rid of this one. Measure 13. So click and then delete. Now from 13 to 28, let's go to utilities again. For measure 13 to 28. Because we got rid of one, it kind of messed it up a little bit. So let's just go back to the earliest point to avoid confusion. So let's just go back to measure 6. Sorry, let's do it here. Measure 6 through 28. 4 measures per system or per line. This is what I was talking about, how sometimes in some functions it counts pickup measures as one and others it doesn't. So I think this will actually fix it. 5 to 28, 4 measures. There we go. Took a while, but we got it. And that's part of using software notation programs. With each version, little things change. So it's not about becoming an expert in one particular version. It's about getting used to how they work and knowing, the quirks and being able to kind of work through it and figure it out. Okay, so next, they're lined up. The chords actually look a lot better now, but they're still really close together. And we can and will change where the chord symbol is in relation to the staff, but first let's just spread those staves out a bit because you'll notice there's a lot of extra room down here. So the staff tool is the one with the treble clef, and I'm just going to grab the first one and lower it a little bit. I'm going to grab the next one and lower that a little bit, and I'm just going to repeat this throughout, just so it's not quite so crowded. I could go a little bit more because there's still some space down here, but I'm not going to because I think that's clear enough. I also think the chord symbols could stay where they are, but let's say you wanted to change them. You click back on the chord tool, double click the measure in question, and go to the second arrow from the right, and you can lower that like that. And one of these, let's see which one it is. Is it the first one? No, not the first one. Put that back. The third one. One of them actually will lower all the chords. There we go. It's 3. So that looks good. Now let's just move this one back up to be in line with the third arrow. Okay, so that all looks good. So now let's just look at the last things that are different from the page. Now we don't need that 144 at the top. That's just a page number of the book that it comes from. But let's make the copyright look a little closer. The capital T in the main tool palette is a text tool. So double click that square there. And let's just put the spaces where they are. So after music, drop the cursor and do delete, return. And then we're going to do the same thing after renewed. Also, space needs to go there. Now I'm going to do Command All. Let's see if we can center it. Font size, style. Justification, center. There we go. That looks closer. Now this part down here is actually more of a typewriter font. This is really little and nitpicky, but again, you want to get used to these small things because you really want to be aware of attention to detail. So click on text, style, font, and either typewriter or Courier would be fine for this. Let's start with typewriter. That would be a little bit closer. Okay, so it looks like they don't have a typewriter built into this one. They should have Courier New though. Then regular. There we go. It looks just a little bit closer. Last things we need are the intro and the head. So we're going to use that text tool. We're just going to double click approximately where we want it, write in what we want, and then click the square and drag that to roughly the right space. Double click and head. In jazz, a head just means the melody, the main part that gets repeated. Now in the music, they have boxes around it. That's something that is a little bit trickier to put in, so that's something that we'll worry about a little bit later. I have to write bass, continue, simile, down here. That's a little large. I'm going to Command A to copy that. Text, size, let's go down to 12. That's better. It's still a little big, but it's not as obnoxious. So that just means that this bum 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 bum, that arpeggio keeps going on throughout the rest of it. Changing with the chords, 1 5 1 3, fitting in with the chords. Okay, and with that, I think we're done. The final thing to talk about, though, actually two other things. For one, let's change this. If you see two people's names like Lennon and McCartney, you might think that two people wrote the song. So just to be extra clear that we didn't write this, I like to put ARR period. So this is the composer, this is the arranger. For the chords, there's something called chord playback. So if you click on the C minor 7, C major 7 over here, it's tough to tell because it's small, but it's a capital. All of a sudden, this pops up on the top chord. So it says enable chord playback. So if that's off, if that's deselected, then you're just going to hear the melody notes. But if that's selected, you're going to hear that chord being sustained. So let's listen to what it sounds like with it on, because we've already heard what it sounds like with it off. And actually, let's underline these. Select that, text, style, underline, and do the same thing. So that sounds good, but I just noticed something. This is something that does not happen with the engraver style, but it does happen occasionally with the jazz one. Over here, we typed in lowercase b and it showed up as flat. But when we try to do it here, it showed up as an uppercase b, which of course means something very different. So let's go back to the chord selector tool, double click that, and see if we change the B. I'm just going to have to change the whole thing. So E7, let's try -5, which is another way to write flat or minor. So it's already telling us that it doesn't know what it is. So when that happens, and this does happen, it's kind of frustrating, we can always do this. Delete the chord entirely, because again, don't think about the important thing being what it plays back as, think about the important things being what you print in Hand to Musician. So we're going to go to text, I'm just going to type in E7, parentheses, flat, okay, so I have to change the text on that one, 5, comma, sharp 9, or maybe even if we do this, flat 5, nope. Let's just try it out. Nope. Okay, so I'll put that back to how we had it. E7, E7, parentheses, flat 5, sharp 9, close parentheses. And now we're going to select that text and just change the typeface on that, change the font to really anything. Arial, sure. It looks weird, it stands out, but at least they're going to play the right note. So if you really wanted to, you could go through here and find something that's a little bit closer in style. Something like that. And again, it looks kind of funny, but the most important thing is that the chord is played correctly. So now let's get rid of this one. So that's an A7 flat 5 sharp 9. Let's actually copy this. Just change that to A. Okay. So there you go. This is what your finished product should look like. If you can turn it in looking exactly like this, you'll get an A on it. The way you will export this is go to File, Print, click on PDF, Save as PDF, and you're going to type in your name, or let's say just your last name, Footprints, and you'll save that. And that's what you'll email me, that PDF. Email me if you have any questions. Good luck.